My name is James Simmons. So I'm going to take you through the day of the planner and how PlannerOne can make your planning more efficient. So instead of just diving into pure functionality, we're going to try to show you how to accomplish some everyday scenarios. So let's talk about the afternoon process of the planner. So how do we deal with machine center breakdowns, how to add capacity to production, how to see if resources are overloaded, and then how to use our markers. All right, so machine center breakdowns. So let's say production floor calls us and says that basically this machine center right here has broken down early in the morning. So if we go up here to actions, we do have this close feature right here. So let's give us a second here. So then a window pops up basically saying us that we've selected resource, which is the machine center, 120. And when do we want to start the breakdown period? When do we want to end it? If we want to say what was the cause of this, say breakdown, and then we can add it. So just give it a few seconds here. And then when it records the breakdown, it will replan the operations accordingly to respect the breakdown period. So this is nice here because standard NAV, it's a little tedious to record the breakdowns, and then you would actually have to go back and adjust the schedules accordingly. So once we do the breakdowns here, we can actually just publish it back to NAV and have those updated. All right, next we're going to talk about how do we know which resources are authorized for us to move an operation to. So if I were to move this operation right here and then drag it way down and put it on a machine center, then I know it's not in the routing. So you will get an error message saying that this is not an approved operation, but we can see which ones that we're allowed to use. So if we go over here and look at our operations section, and then we can take a look at our usable resources. And then I actually have to select one of the operations. And I can see that the only operation that this production order could be performed on is machine center 110, but if I did add some substitutions in the setups, I can see all the available different ones that I can choose. Now we do have the option to be completely flexible. We do have the option to do a forced move, which will bypass basically any substitution work centers or machine centers, and will let you move it to anyone you need to. So it is an option there to force it. So a little bit later in the day, let's say the breakdown was actually pretty easy to fix, so it did not need to involve this full time period. We can actually go up here and delete our exceptions. And as simple as just checking this box right here, delete the exception and delete the selection. So then it will revert all of the operations back to the correct times. So pretty simple there. All right, so let's talk about bottlenecks and constraints and how to deal with those. So we can look at the load on each machine center, and basically this is driving delays in our key indicators. Then we can actually add capacity. Now there's several ways to do this. You can actually open an exception, the reverse of a breakdown. Let's say that we wanted to approve some overtime, so we can select this machine center and it'll open up a box where we can record overtime. So let's just say for a certain date range for this machine center, I wanted to add it from 4 to midnight, almost like another shift. We can perform that. Option 2 is we can go back to NAV and modify the resources calendars. So that's already available without PlannerOne, but that'll be the other. And then we can always add another shift to that machine center. We add another shift or modify the capacities, and then all those will be recalculated in this view. So how can we see these bottlenecks, like so overloading of machine and work centers? So first we want to actually take a look and see what we are using in our optimization window. So we definitely want to take a look and make sure we're utilizing material availability, so we'll plan around that, and respecting our calendars. So next we're going to take a look at our load charts. So let's take a look at that. Takes a few seconds to run an update here. Okay, so what are we looking at in this Gantt chart? Here we have our work centers and machine centers and our calendar at the top. And right now, let me remove this so we can just look at one variable at a time. So it'll take off one variable. And let's go ahead and look at our loads. So we can see as of today, Machine Center 120 is at 99.79% capacity. So potentially this could be a bottleneck if we see this trend carry on. And the more and more data I put in here, you'll see it push out to further dates. So how would I know how much to add if I need to add more capacity? So we would definitely want to add infinite capacity to show us basically how much more through the calculation we would need to add. So we're expecting that. Percentages are fine, but let's look at the amount of hours. So I can drag this down here. So I get another row with capacity and hours. So we'll see that running everything without constraints, I only have 0.63 hours left. But if this was way over, I could see that I might need to add another 10 hours. So pretty simple there. Also, I have in the background set up some colors to indicate different amounts that are over for loads. So percentage. So orange is a warning. I have it set to go to red if it goes over 99%. And then like yellow would be before orange. So I think I have that set around the 75% range. So again, that's a setup that we can do. So there is plenty of availability to customize your view here. As far as your time scale, controlled here. These are all the variables that we can look at, mix and match, and it'll fully adjust this. So next we're going to take a look at how to use markers. So we can go back to our resource view here. And under actions, I do have a section for markers. Now markers are a great tool. So basically, multiple users can be set up to allow to add alerts as part of the markers. There's 3 different types of markers. Alerts being the most generic. You do have a couple options here. So if I wanted to select this one right here, take a look at the different type of alerts I can do. Basically, this is going to be pretty generic as far as the indication, but we can add comments. That's pretty nice there. We have the ability to add messages, so you can actually pick one of these icons and add a message. And we can also add tags. Tags are the most flexible because we can actually pick our icons, and it's a little bit more customizable. So basically, every time we want to tag something, it would be a unique icon, so we know exactly what we're looking at without actually having to hover over it. So it's as easy as selecting the operation, picking the type of marker you want, and adding. So I've already added one to this. So you can see here, I just made a warning marker, and then for the comment, I put on a checklist plan. So that's pretty nice. It's a great collaborative tool. So that goes into the different kinds of users. So using markers, the planner has the most functionality in PlannerOne, the most rights. Basically, they can move around operations, they can add markers, delete markers, the whole 9 yards. Next level down, we have collaborators. So collaborators would be someone that can actually go in here and just add markers to operations. That way the planner can see it and adjust accordingly. And then we also have viewers. Basically, they're not going to be able to actually add markers or change any operations. They would just be able to see the view here, hover over it, and see what the messages are. So once we add our markers, and then to actually get these changes or comments back over, you go back to our planning and republish. So the afternoon of the planner, let's talk about how to handle the material shortages, how to change the sequence operations on a machine center, talk about how to modify a production order, expedite a production order, add additional operations to production orders, and then again, we can see these through the key performance indicator. So I won't go into great detail, but just to show you how we can use PlannerOne to accomplish these. So material shortages. So looking at our resource Gantt chart here, I noticed this operation is supposed to start in the middle of the day here. Purchasing gives me a call and says that their purchase order is getting delayed out. So they can give me, say, well, when are we going to get it? Once I get that date, I can actually go in here under our optimization. And there's actually a fixed date toggle here. So if I select this, select our operation, I can actually point and drag it out to the material shortage date, place it here, and since it's fixed, every time I go to drag another operation, the one that I moved here cannot be moved because it's respecting that fixed date. So that'd be a great way to handle material shortage. And then that's half of the link right there is basically fixing it. And then if I go back to our routing lines, then in the production order routing line, I can actually assign that shortage date. So if I go ahead and here, take a look at our routing. So you can see that some of that information, there's actually more columns added into the routing. So we can actually have material fixed dates come over as well, so everybody can see. All right, so next let's talk about how to change the sequence on a machine center. So if you open the machine center card, basically you need to find out which operation number you want to change. And then we can go back into PlannerOne. And let's talk about our resource sequence Gantt chart. All right, so this shows basically in order of all the operations to start for a specific machine center. So if we know that maybe we need to override the flow here, you can change the sequence. So it's easy as highlighting one of these and then dragging it straight up, and it'll rearrange the list of operations. That's a great feature right there. And then again, you can see this is demo data, so some of these times are going to be way off. But you can actually see the changes live in effect, what it does when you move these. So that's how you can control the daily operations of a specific machine center by operation. So the modification of a work order, that's pretty straightforward. It would start a nav, would actually open up the work order, and we could adjust the quantities to produce, and then replan, and we'll push it back into PlannerOne so we can take a look at the changes, make any changes accordingly, and then republish. So that's a pretty straightforward scenario just by changing the quantity. How to deal with urgent work orders. So sales calls us and says that a customer needs a rush on a certain order. So in order to deal with that, we would go to our resource Gantt chart, go to our production scheduler, go back to our resource Gantt chart, and we can use our move function and hover over here, find the work order, and then replan it accordingly to when the customer needs it to see if it's at all possible without delaying all of our other work orders. And then again, as we're moving it around, we're constantly looking at our planning indicators to see how it's affecting all of the other work orders. So pretty simple there. So another Gantt chart that I want to talk about quickly is the work order Gantt chart. It's also a pretty important view. So what does this show us? We're looking at all of our different work orders / production orders. What items are on those production orders, the quantities. And what I can see here is I have exposed is my start date, my due date, and when these are going to finish. So I can see that they're all going to come in on time. If they're more sporadically placed, I can actually assign a different color range to these. So if I wanted to take here, I can go to my color operations and say, show me anything that's a delay. So anything green will be on time. If it's yellow, it's pushing a little bit past late. If it's red, it's past our due date. So it looks like we're in good shape here. So this will be another great tool you can use in your plan.